The death of a child is often called a parent's worst nightmare. In the case of Tom and Eileen Smith, their daughter Laura died after a legal abortion. Their story tells us about their journey to find out the truth about why Laura died. I'll also talk to Carol Everett, the one-time owner of abortion facilities, and a person who had an abortion herself. Together they paint a poignant picture of when abortion turns to tragedy. At the age of 22, Laura was engaged and planning her wedding. After spending the summer at the Jersey Shore with family and friends, Laura headed back to her home in Massachusetts. No one knew it would be the last time they'd see her. I spoke with Laura's parents, Tom and Eileen Smith, and asked them to share Laura's story. You got a phone call on September 13th. I understand it was Laura's friend Karen that called?
That's right. It's actually, she called my cell phone, and when she called, she was hysterical. And I'm like, you know, on caller ID, I knew it was Laura's phone. I'm like, what?
Yeah, we thought it was Laura calling.
And she, you know, was just beginning to say things like Laura wasn't breathing, and she had taken her to a clinic. At first, my initial reaction was, I don't know what you're doing this
wrong
for.
Number.
Why, wrong number. Why are you? This is not funny. You know, this is not. And I just kind of handed the phone to Eileen because I didn't know how to respond. I just said, here, listen to this. And then Eileen took the phone.
And the girl's still crying hysterically, and I heard 4 words: Laura, hospital, not breathing, and abortion.
Well, what was going through your minds when those words were coming over the phone line?
It was like a foreign language. I couldn't comprehend them. They didn't make sense.
What did you do after you hung up the phone? What was your
We
next
just started throwing things in suitcases because we were in Jersey. Laura was in Hyannis, Massachusetts. So we were out of the house within a half hour. I'd say it was at that point 8:30 at night, and we drove through the night. We drove to the hospital because we wanted to see Laura. We couldn't believe it. We wanted to see her.
On September 13, 2007, a 911 call was made by a staff member at the Women's Health Center in Hyannis, Massachusetts.
Eileen, what's the location of emergency?
Hi, at 68 Camp Street, upstairs at Women's Health Center.
At Women's Health Center?
Yeah, 68 Camp Street, Hyannis.
Okay, and what's going on there?
It seems like the girl aspirated. She's not breathing.
Okay.
Hi.
What's your name?
Kim.
Kim, what's your phone number?
It's 508
Yep.
775.
I'll arrest you right there.
Thanks.
Thank you.
On September 13, 2007, Laura Smith drove with her friend Karen to the Women's Health Center where Laura had scheduled an abortion. Karen dropped Laura off and had agreed to come back and pick her up. When Karen returned, the center seemed empty. She had to bang on the doors until someone let her in. Karen stood in the waiting room alone.
The official handholder came out of the room where Laura had gone in for an abortion and said, Laura aspirated. And Karen didn't understand the term. What do you mean she aspirated? And she said she's not breathing.
Tom and Eileen drove through 5 states praying to find their daughter alive, but by the time they made it to the hospital, it was too late.
After a while, they had to take her out and put her in the morgue because they don't leave a body out that long. So the worst experience of my life, going down to the morgue and seeing them roll her out in a body bag, unzipping a body bag, and there was my beautiful, precious daughter laying on a table, you know, those tables with wheels, and I just stayed there for half an hour staring at her, telling her to wake up.
Tom, when you found out what the call was really about and it began to sink in, how did you react? What was your response to that?
I think, you know, I think I just really shut down. I mean, I couldn't even, you know, coming from, you know, I think not too long before when Laura was down at the shore with us and our children were down, I remember remarking to Eileen how blessed we felt and how, you know, we just felt blessed. And so it was when the incomprehensible happens and you're, you know, the emotion, I mean, and still to this day, there's just like, for the most part, it's just like a profound sorrow that hits me in waves at times where I'll hear a song or I'll hear, or subject will come up or a picture, and then all of a sudden it hits me in a wave, and and I start weeping, and I can't even, it's still so fresh and so powerful.
Although time has passed since Laura's death, according to her friends and family, Laura's legacy will live on. Her MySpace page on the internet is regularly updated. Friends post messages on a daily basis, sharing their stories about their lives and telling Laura how much she is missed.
There are some questions that we don't have answers for. The medics were not able to revive her, the hospital was not able to, and they said that's unusual with a young person. They can usually work on them if they're called in time.
So there's speculation that she was left for some duration of period.
Yes, that's the speculation. I don't know if the truth will come out.
Coming up, I'll talk with a former owner of abortion centers who has witnessed firsthand the devastating physical impact abortion can have on a woman's body.
Whether you're a student needing answers, a parent needing help, or a concerned citizen wanting to make a difference, Life Issues Institute has the resources you need to put your values into action. Life Issues Institute is an international educational organization committed to protecting innocent human life. Life Issues Institute knows what it takes. That's why millions throughout the world turn here for help. Life Issues Institute has authored more pro-life publications than any other entity in the world, and its materials are printed in over 30 languages. Radio broadcasts, newsletters, and a website filled to the brim with the answers you're looking for are just a click away. Go to facinglife.tv and click on the link to Life Issues Institute to find out more about how you can change the heart of a nation.
This week, Tom and Eileen Smith are talking about the abortion that took the life of their 22-year-old daughter Laura and her 13-week-old baby. Carol Everett, a former owner of 2 abortion facilities, joined me to talk about the physical side effects abortion can have on a woman.
First of all, we did not keep statistics such as infections or bleeding. We only kept statistics on surgery. And 1 out of 500 women in the last 18 months had a hysterectomy, a colostomy, and 1 woman died. Now, we were careful to get her out of the clinic before she died, so we could always say no one had ever died there, because that is a question women ask. Has anyone ever died here? We said no. And we told our staff nothing about the death. We didn't want them to be caught up in that. And when someone went to the hospital, we took them across town. An ambulance is terrible publicity in front of an abortion clinic. So we put them in my car, took them to a hospital where the staff and the hospital would help us in our cover-up. My doctor called in favors from other doctors. They falsified the records, and we did not show botched abortions. We had 1 woman who came in 22 weeks pregnant. We put her on the table. It was an in utero pregnancy. Everything was fine. We put her on the table. We put her on the table to examine her, and everything was fine. Moved her to another room for the late-term abortion. Now, my job was to hold that uterus for 2 of the abortions. It's the Hansen maneuver, and you tell him, okay, the head's here, the feet are here, the buttocks are here, and you actually move the baby down into the forceps. And the first time he went in, he pulled out placenta, which is normal. And the second time he went in, he perforated the uterus and pulled her bowel out. Think about that for a minute. That abortion is over on that table. You can't go back in there and pull more of her bowel through. He's missed the baby already. He has a hole in the uterus. We had to transport her to the hospital in my car. We had an IV started. She screamed the entire way. We got her to the back of the hospital in the emergency room, and 1 doctor came screaming out of the hospital, "I won't cover this one up for him, Carol. I will not cover this up." About that time, the doctor arrives, puts his arm around this doctor, and they're walking away, and the next thing I know, they come back and they take the girl inside. They admit her, and after hours of surgery, The doctor comes out and tells me that it was an abdominal pregnancy. He tells me, as if I'm going to believe him, that that pregnancy was outside the uterus. That would have been, we would have been able to diagnose that in advance. We didn't, but that's what he told her. He took the baby, put it in a disposable drape, covered it up, and put it in the incinerator bag. And she walked out of that hospital with a colostomy and was told it was because it was an abnormal pregnancy, and it was not. I remember one doctor called me. I was actually outside the room, and they called me in and said, this woman has a tumor at the back of her uterus, and I'm going to pull it off. And I thought, how can you pull a tumor off the back of a woman's uterus? It wasn't a tumor, Brad. He pulled her uterus wrong side out. And that woman had a hysterectomy because the doctor was too aggressive. Abortionists are not doctors. They don't save lives. They don't protect life. They take life. And they take lives in ways that you and I don't think of. Yes, they take the baby's life, but many times they take the woman's life because of their lack of standard of care.
In Laura Smith's case, the standard of care provided by the abortionist, Rapin Osathananda, was substandard, resulting in her death. Laura's mother, Eileen, recently received the autopsy report explaining her daughter's cause of death. The cause of death was recently released, is that correct?
Yes.
What was the outcome of that?
The cause of death on the death certificate reads cardiac pulmonary arrest during anesthesia during an elective termination of uterine pregnancy.
And in layman's terms, that means?
Her heart stopped and she stopped breathing because of the anesthesia.
So how do you think that the abortionist operated that would have allowed this to happen?
Well, it has come out through my investigations that there was no other medical staff in his office. He had no nurse, no anesthesiologist, no LPN. He was doing level 3 drugs, and he was doing everything by himself. And he only had employed a receptionist and a hand holder. And when I found that out, that was one of the things I could not believe, that he was doing this by himself. I researched all the drugs that she was given, and I called the manufacturers, and they recommend that the person administering the drug not be the one doing the procedure. And then I found out it was medical standards, besides them recommending it. I talked to many healthcare professionals, and they really don't like lawyers, and they don't like healthcare professionals being sued. Those people were appalled at what he did when I told them the facts of Laura's case, and they said, you need to go after him. It's unbelievable what he did to your daughter.
So he was performing the surgical procedure by himself.
Yes.
He administered the anesthetic and then performed the abortion.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And under proper medical conditions, somebody else would have been administering the anesthesia.
And monitoring her vital signs. Laura just died because she didn't have air. That's all she needed was air. That's what he didn't give her.
When we return, Eileen talks about her face-to-face meeting with the abortionist responsible for Laura's abortion.
Thank you for inviting us into your home. Each week we feature real people who deal with real-life issues head-on. Some of their experiences are uplifting, while others will break your heart. But in the end, the message is clear. Those who follow biblical principles on the issues of life are blessed. Become a partner with us in providing a positive, life-affirming message to help change the way the next generation values innocent human life. Please consider a generous gift to help offset the costs of producing this important quality programming. You can donate on our secure website at facinglife.tv or by calling the phone number on your screen during normal business hours. Together, we can make a real difference for life.
Tom and Eileen Smith never thought they'd have to bury one of their children. After the sudden death of their daughter Laura, Eileen decided to investigate the course of events that led to this tragedy. That meant temporarily relocating to Hyannis, Massachusetts, where Laura had been living. Eileen, you recently returned from Massachusetts, right?
Correct, yes.
What were you doing there?
I was trying to get justice for Laura and answers about her death. The doctor, I met with him 10 days after she died. I went and met him in a public lobby of a big Boston hotel. He wouldn't let my husband come. He said in cases like these, I like to meet with the mother alone. My husband was there and he was watching. The doctor just didn't know it. He was about 50 feet away from me and just sat there.
As you're observing the man that was responsible for your daughter's death, what were you thinking?
I didn't feel the level of anger that I thought I would feel. You know, it was like there was obviously great distaste and I didn't want to be around the man, but it was like I was really just overwhelmed with the grief of my daughter's death, that it didn't matter. It was the fact that she was gone was what I felt more than who did it or how it was done.
You know, I was waiting for a monster to approach me, you know, with hair on his face and fangs. I thought this horrible thing he did, he must be a horrible man, but it was this tall, gentle, elderly man, you know, of Asian descent, very soft-spoken. I would have had him over for dinner if I didn't know what he did. You know, it was just, I couldn't shake his hand. I just said, we'll sit here. I couldn't, you know, greet the man that way, but I interviewed him for an hour and a half. After the first hour, when I got everything I wanted to get out of him, I asked the Lord and I said, is there anything you want me to say to him? Would you like to know what I said to him? Mm-hmm. God is the giver of life, and no man has the right to take away life. I said, your mother gave you life. You were allowed to live. You have taken so many lives of children. They deserve life.
Next, I asked Carol about the business of abortion.
We tried very hard to sell an abortion to every woman who walked through that front door.
Whether you're a student needing answers, a parent needing help, or a concerned citizen wanting to make a difference, Life Issues Institute has the resources you need to put your values into action. Life Issues Institute is an international educational organization committed to protecting innocent human life. Life Issues Institute knows what it takes. That's why millions throughout the world turn here for help. Life Issues Institute has authored more pro-life publications than any other entity in the world, and its materials are printed in over 30 languages. Radio broadcasts, newsletters, and a website filled to the brim with the answers you're looking for are just a click away. Go to facinglife.tv and click on the link to Life Issues Institute to find out more about how you can change the heart of a nation.
In the early 1980s, Carol Everett was making $25 for every abortion her center performed. In 1 month, she made nearly $14,000.
It costs the same amount of money to get a non-pregnant one in or a woman who doesn't really want an abortion as it does a pregnant one. So we tried to prove to every one of them that abortion was the answer and that it would take care of all their problems. We tried very hard to sell an abortion to every woman who walked through that front door.
So it was a business.
It was a huge business.
Did you knowingly do abortions on women who you knew were not pregnant?
This is one of the hard things for me. I always convinced myself that it was the doctor's responsibility for those women who were not pregnant, not mine. And yes, I knew we were doing abortions on women that were not pregnant because we had a whole sales technique for that woman whose pregnancy test was negative. We allowed them to watch their pregnancy test turn positive or negative. That's a powerful, powerful sales tool. And if it's positive, I train my people, look, you've got to clean that up. So clean that up, let her cry, let her deal with her issues and turn around. And we grabbed her on the bony part of her elbow and squeezed those two bones just to get her attention and said, if you have your money, we can take care of it right now. and we'd take her up front. But if that test was negative, we let her watch that. And we said, this test is not sensitive enough to pick up an early pregnancy. You could still be pregnant and this test would be negative. And I know you want to know for sure today, don't you? She would say yes. And we'd take her down the hall for the sonogram, checking all the way down the hall to be certain she did not read sonograms for a living. We'd put her on that table. Brad, I could put you on that table and you would be pregnant. Because we all have blobs in our abdomen. And we would just find a blob in that abdomen. We would lock that screen in place, and that's the one time she saw the screen. We didn't let her see it if it was a real baby. But when we were proving a woman was pregnant when she wasn't, we said, there it is. See there, you're pregnant.
And it was just a blob, so it didn't look like a baby.
Doesn't look
Because
like
it wasn't.
anything. And so she buys that because she believes she's pregnant, or she wouldn't have been in the abortion clinic. It was bad news, or she wouldn't have been in the abortion clinic. And the next question as you grab the bony part of her elbow again is, do you have your money? Can you do it today? The sad thing is, those are the women that have the most pain because they're not pregnant. It's harder to dilate their uterus, and they scrape out more of the lining of the uterus to have a specimen. So I wonder about the infertility implications of that procedure.
That wasn't even necessary.
No. We'll never know. We have no statistics and no ability to gather those statistics.